right, good afternoon. I'm Betsey Kulakowski. I'm with the Oklahoma Safety Council. I'm the Director of Training and Development of the Council. Been there just a little bit over a year and a half. Before that, I basically did what John Dyer did. I was the Assistant Director of the Public Employees Occupational Safety and Health Division. So I'm very passionate about public sector workplace safety as well as private sector. I also worked in our consultation program, so I did work a lot with the private sector. Tried to bring what I know from the private sector to the public sector, and one of those things is workplace safety culture. It's something I'm very passionate about, so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. A little bit about my background. I'm also getting ready to graduate from college, finally getting my degree in emergency management. So I'm with you on that. When I was working in the consultation program, my first foray into disaster response and recovery was with the Murrah bombing. Was sent to the World Trade Center and worked there, worked Hurricane Katrina, worked the tornadoes up in Woodward, and then also worked with OSHA's response team and more after the tornadoes there. So I've had some experience with response and recovery, do a lot with preparation in the workplace, helping companies get their safety and health emergency action plans in place. So it's something I'm very passionate about, and I'm really excited to be able to get my degree in that. Plus I got a grant. That helped. So today we're going to talk about safety culture and what that means. So, what does your safety culture look like? Where are you in your journey? And these are the steps that companies have to take, and this applies to public sector as well. Typically, we begin with education. We start talking about our culture. We start training our employees on safety. First day, every employee should have some kind of a safety orientation, right? So we start with education. The next step, we move into enforcement, and that's internal enforcement, not John Dyer enforcement. This is how we do things in-house. How do we make sure people are doing what they're supposed to do? How do we enforce our rules internally? Then we start looking at the hierarchy of control. How are we going to protect our employees from those hazards? Under the hierarchy of control, you start with engineering. If you can engineer that hazard out, that's your first step. You should do that. If it's not feasible, then you're going to look at administrative controls and procedures. What are your rules? Last and always last is personal protective equipment. Too many times employers automatically jump to PPE. Oh, there's flying debris in the warehouse. We need to put everybody in safety glasses. Well, no, let's go back to engineering. How can we get rid of the debris? What kind of a saw are we using? Does it need a guard? Is there some other control that we can do? So we have to follow that hierarchy of control. Then we begin to look at behaviors. Anybody ever heard of behavior-based safety? There's a guy named E. Scott Geller. He's amazing, and he is the father of behavior-based safety. So we start looking at how are our employees behaving? How are our supervisors behaving? We look at our processes. We may need to change our procedures. We may need to look at our processes. Then we want to look at the organization. We want to look at leadership. And then and only then can we really influence our culture. All these other things have to be in place. Once we do that, then we know we've achieved excellence. So we're going to talk about what a safety culture is. Behaviors are generally ruled by a personal value system. What do the employees believe? What do they think about safety? We've got a regulatory compliance at the enforcement level, and again, the organizational value. What does our company or our city value as an organization? So we're going to talk a little bit about those today. When we talk about a safety and health management system, we're not talking about a book on a shelf. Those books on the shelf are part of the system. This is an all-encompassing management style, organizational system, and it's three major components. There's the operational, our managerial, and then our culture. And the culture is the foundation of everything we do. So we're going to talk a lot about the culture today. I'm not going to talk a lot about the managerial or the organizational, but I will reference it a few times. So we're going to focus on the culture and how we influence our culture. Here we go. Those three major components we talked about, every mandated program that OSHA or POSH has includes those elements. There's a managerial component, there's an operational component, and there's an employee involvement component, which is the culture. But a comprehensive safety and health management system is really much broader than just those three elements. There's actually several different ways they can be broken down. When we talk about a culture, it's basically how do we do things around our place? What do we believe? What do we value? What do we want people to do? That's what our culture is. It's how things are done. If you've ever watched people come into a room and look at which seat they pick, that's based on some kind of a cultural belief. Some people like to sit in the front row. Some people like to sit in the back row. Who sits in the back row? The ones that are late. No, those are the people who got here first. They got to sit in the back. So that's kind of a cultural component where people will sit in a room. It's based on their personal beliefs. It's based on where they're comfortable. Sometimes it's based on what's available. So that is a cultural component. The true definition of a safety culture is a workplace where everyone believes, and they truly believe, that they have not only a right to a safe and healthful workplace, but a responsibility for themselves and for others. Most people know they have a right. They don't want to think about what the responsibilities are, am I right? You have to start with training. They have to understand you have a right, and with every right comes a responsibility. You have to do this, 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 and this, so that you know what your responsibilities are. And sometimes that includes protecting your coworkers. I tell people, my job is to protect you from you in spite of you. And I've had to do that with workers who didn't want to follow the rules. It's like, this is for your personal safety. This isn't for any other reason. I want you to go home at the end of the day. So we want that culture to be present. There are 4 major elements of a safety and health management system: management commitment, employee involvement, hazard recognition and control, and education and training. Now, when I worked in the OSHA consultation division, we can actually break that out into 58 individual elements. When we talk about the Form 33, just know that means there's 58 attributes that are on that form, and I'm going to cover some of those attributes today. We'll talk a little bit about it. Anybody wants a presentation with more detail, we can certainly put one together for that. But these are the 4 basic elements that we look at. Management leadership drives everything in a safety and health management system. Everything has to start at the top. And whoever your chief elected official is, your CEO, if you will, has to start with them. And maybe it starts at you and you encourage him up a little bit so that he'll support you as you encourage down. But management commitment is an essential element. It has to be in place for your industry or for your facility to grow. So as a safety leader, there's some questions you need to ask yourself. And maybe your CEO needs to ask these of themselves. How important is safety? Does anybody in here think safety is not at all important? Okay, good. I'm preaching to the choir. We're good. Is safety the most important thing? All of the time or most of the time? All of the time. Did somebody say most? Okay. All of the time. Is it okay to compromise safety if it's going to cost more? Thank you. Thank you. That's what I like to hear. How do you show your employees that you care? You make sure they go home at the end of the day with all 10 fingers and all 10 toes in the same condition that they came to work in. That's one of the best ways you can show your employees you care. Getting them involved and getting them to help you helps get that done. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So if you want to have a positive safety culture, you want to make sure you're developing and promoting managers who share in that thought. Sometimes you don't have any control over that, but anything you can do to foster that will help your culture. Are you ripe for improvement? Is there a desire for something better? Everybody happy with where they're at? Never be happy with where you're at. Always strive for something better. Are you tired of good enough? There's a quote that says, "Good is the enemy of great." I never am happy with good enough. I always want to be great. Is top management willing to provide the resources necessary? That can be tricky. And I'll talk a little bit about how to get more resources without spending more money. Anybody want to hear that part? Okay, we'll talk about that. Are employees willing to accept responsibility for themselves and others? This may be where you have a little bit of work to do. But part of it is the educational component, part of it's the disciplinary action component. We'll talk about that. does everybody understand that the regulations are minimum requirements? It's the least you can do, right? You can be 100% compliant with every standard ever written by law enforcement ever and still have people get killed because they are minimum standards. That is all the government is allowed to enforce. It takes you saying, that's not good enough, we're going to do more. So, you want to make sure that you're more than just compliant. I had an employer once pull their OSHA book off the shelf and go, would you just circle which ones you want me to follow? And I took a Sharpie marker and went all the way around the book. How about these right here? And oh, by the way, there's this book, and there's this book, and there's this book, and this book. And they're like, how am I supposed to do that? It's your duty. I'm going to help you figure it out. So are you willing to go above and beyond the minimum requirements? Do you know what your injuries and illnesses are costing you? Anybody ever done a cost analysis on their injuries and illness, or maybe your workers' comp provides that? OMAG, do y'all do that? You do that? Y'all do any kind of a cost analysis on injuries?
I'm sure we do.
I'm sure you probably do. Would you rather take that money and put it back into your programs for your people? Yeah. Okay, so there's this little e-tool on OSHA's website called Safety Pays, and that's with the $sign. And it will let you take your 300 log and put your data in. Now, it's for private sector, so it's going to put a profit margin in there. You guys can skip the profit margin part, but it's going to do it automatically at 3%. But there's still some good data you can get out of it. So here's what a report kind of looks like when it comes back in, and I actually did this for an employer that I did a consultation for. I took their 300 log. In this year, which was 2017, they had 2 sprains and 2 lacerations. Now this is an estimate, this wasn't an exact cost analysis, but the direct cost of those 2 sprains and the direct cost of those 2 lacerations came up to $208,000 and some change. Little minor injuries. People don't understand the direct cost is typically paid by workers' comp. Insurance covers that. But that indirect cost, you don't really see that up front, but that's coming right out of your pocket. All right, so then the next year, this was 2016. I got my slides out of order. They had a few more injuries. 1 sprain, a broken tooth, a couple of contusions, and some lacerations. And their total combined direct and indirect costs, $450,000 and some change. Okay? Now this is a part that you don't have to look at that because this is what takes into account the profit margin, and that's basically the same as what's down here. So look at what's circled. That's where their money's going. This is 2015. And again, we had 4 contusions. Those are bruises, typically minor, but they may have needed pain medication, or they may have had something that made it recordable where they lost some work time. $324,000. So for those 3 years, the grand total was $983,955. Who would not like to have that back in your budget? You can use this e-tool too. Just know you don't worry about the profit margin or the sales that you have to meet, because you can just go in and look and see what your costs are. So you need to know what your injuries are costing you and need to work towards reducing those. Now, John said earlier, majority of injuries and illnesses are sprains and strains. Public sector, it's about 75% of all the reported injuries and illnesses are sprains and strains. And people think, oh, well, those are just sprains. It's just a sprain. Sprains are very expensive. Soft tissue injuries are very expensive. The only thing that's more expensive are burns. Burns are horribly expensive to treat. So even something as minor as a sprain and strain, you need to look at how you're doing the job. What are you using for lifting? Is it a 2-person lift? Is somebody just trying to make a shortcut and get something done? Those are things you can influence. How can you change what you have? You have to, first of all, be right for change. Because if you always give what you always gave, you'll always get what you always got, right? You have to be the change. And it has to have action behind it. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the ways we can change. First of all, you want to communicate and relate behaviors and decisions to the attitudes that are expected and supported by your organization. Set the expectation first. What do you want your employees to do? What do you want your middle managers to do? What is the top management expected to do in order to support safety? Is safety a value or a priority? Anybody have a poster in their facility that says, safety first? Please burn it. I hate with a mad burning passion the phrase safety first, because that tells me safety is a priority, and priorities change. From minute to minute, from hour to hour, priorities change. My priority this morning when I got up was to get to work by 7:15 and make the coffee. Mama's got to have her coffee. But then the phone rang, and the kids were fighting, and the dog ran outside, and there was a possum in the yard. My priorities very quickly changed from coffee to possum catcher. Not expecting that this morning. I also had to catch the dog before the dog caught the possum. That was the other concern. Priorities change. But if you value something, that will never change. You want safety to be a value. Just like you value your family, you value your friends, you value your faith, you value your career. Think of the things you value and what that means to your organization. What does your organization value? You have customers, right? I don't know anybody who has any kind of a job who doesn't have a customer of some kind. It's the public, it's the citizens. What kind of social value do you want to demonstrate? What kind of quality product do you want to give? Somebody asked me the other day, Betsy, why are you such a go-getter? What really drives you? What motivates you to be a go-getter? And I said, I think it all started when I worked for the state, because there's a perception that state employees are lazy. And that made me mad, because I always try to give people more than they expect. And don't tell me what I can't do or tell me what I should be, because I will prove you wrong. And I feel that way. You know, we have to give our people a quality product. We have to take care of our customers. We have to be productive. Otherwise, why get out of bed in the morning? Do we want to be professional? Absolutely. That's a good value. Do we want to provide a service to the public? That's what we're all about. But where's safety on your list? It should be right up in there. But again, it's not a bulleted list. It's part of our whole safety value, our whole corporate value. Demonstrate leadership. I mentioned that leadership's important. It starts at the top. You want to act to motivate and inspire others. And sometimes you're leading from the middle. I get that. I grew up leading from the middle. I know what that's like. Managers and supervisors have to not only walk the walk, they got to talk the talk, they got to do both. So if they say, hey, wear your safety glasses, but they walk through the shop and they don't have theirs on, actions speak louder than words. You got to lead. And where the rubber meets the road is the actions. That's what means the most to employees, because they're watching their supervisors all the time to see what they do. And they look to them for an example. You have to clarify to employees that behaviors you want them to know what behaviors are expected of them. People will do what they think you want them to do. I can't tell you how many times I walked through a facility and I was looking at the tools that they had. I had one company I worked with that they did woven barbed wire chain link fencing. And I'm walking through the shop, and I've already seen their logs, and there's 5 pages of lacerations. Well, they work with wire, so it's not completely unexpected, but 5 pages is a bit extreme. And I'm walking through, and I'm looking at the tools they're using to cut plastic, plastic sheeting. Somebody has taken sheets of sheet metal and made shanks to cut the plastic with. Huh? This giant machete made out of sheet metal to cut a piece of plastic. I'm like, where's your box knives? They make this one that has a little hook on it. You just covers the blade. Nobody gets cut. Plastic gets made. Why don't you have these? They're like, boss won't buy us anything else. We had to make do with what we had. I'm asking the boss, why are they making do with what they have? She goes, nobody told us they needed it. Communicate. But management needs to communicate, we expect you to use the tools that are right for the job. So you have to make sure people know what you want them to do. If you need something, come and tell me. I will get you what you need. But then you got to back it up. Having noble aspirations and values is a good place to start. But again, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. And what behaviors of your employees, they tell you about your safety culture. So what are your employees doing? Because they're making do with what they have, that told me a lot about that culture. It wasn't a very productive culture. Behavior can be encouraged, but it can also be discouraged. I had one company, I asked them, I said, well, how does your employer do the training? And the employer had told me in the interview with him, well, I do a safety meeting every morning, and I always ask them if they have questions, and we go over this, and we go over that. Well, then I asked the employees, tell me about your morning safety training. Oh, you mean our morning lecture? He stands up there like a mother hen and bok, 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 bok. You will, or you will be fired every day. And then he says, anybody got anything to say about that? And I asked the employees, I said, anybody ever speak up? And they're like, no, we don't want to get fired. That tells me a lot about the culture. It starts with management, but it trickles down to each individual in the company, and everybody has a role to play. Make safety and health more obvious, relevant, and emotional. The employees have to know what's in it for me. For me, going home to my kids at the end of the day, pure gold. Even though they're 17 and 14, and some days I think the dog's happier to see me than them, it's still pure gold for me. Employees have to understand the what's in it for me. What can you get from being safe at work? What do they like to do after hours? Do they like to go shoot bows and arrows? Well, if you throw your shoulder out, you're not going to be shooting your bow and arrow for a while. Okay, so that's a what's in it for me. If we save money, we might be able to get some raises. I'm on board. Let's do that. They need to know what's in it for them. Safety has to be a good thing. The one thing I hated most, and I loved my job at the Labor Department, loved what I did. I don't ever want to be the safety police, because that means you're making people do something they don't want to do. I want to make them do things that help them that they want to do. And you have to turn around and make it a positive. So you have to show them the benefits of improving your safety culture. That goes back to the what's in it for me. But what's in it for us as a unit, as a collective group? What's in it for our communities? Anybody work with the Safe Communities programs? Anybody in here a safe community through the emergency management? Awesome. So cool. You want to reward people for having a courage to do the right thing. We talk a lot about incentive programs. The worst incentive program you can have is rewarding employees for doing something they didn't, or getting something they didn't do. Or they get a prize for something they didn't do. Like get hurt. That's the expectation. You come to work, you work safely, you don't get hurt, right? We don't want to reward that. That's the expectation. But what's it take to become a safe worker? Reporting hazards, reporting injuries, participating in a safety committee. Those are things that are a positive contribution that benefit everybody. If we're going to do any kind of an incentive program, it should be tied to that. There was a company down in Texas that was a known bad actor to enforcement. They had had a number of injuries. They'd had a fatality several years past. And OSHA came in and said, look, you got to change your evil ways. You've got to become a good actor. You've got to make sure your people are safe. And they're like, okay, OSHA, we hear you. We will change. We will become good. We promise. So OSHA leaves. And the only thing that changed, the owner of the company went out and bought a bass boat. And he pulled the bass boat into the shop and he parked it in the middle of the shop floor. And he got his megaphone and he called all the employees together. Got up in the middle of the bass boat with his megaphone and said, if we can go a whole year without anybody getting hurt, no OSHA recordables, I will put everybody's name in the live well. I will draw a name, and that person wins the boat and a week paid fishing trip with me. Because, of course, he's going to get in on it too, right? I'm buying the boat, I should at least get to fishing at once, right? That was the only thing that changed. They didn't improve machine guarding. They didn't get better hearing protection. They didn't do training. They didn't work with supervisors. They didn't change anything else. And for about 6 months, they got lucky. And one day, an employee got hurt, because luck will only carry you so far. The employee got hurt, and he's going to the office. He's going to report his injury. Oh, I'm hurt, I'm hurt. And his buddy sees him, and he goes, where do you think you're going? He says, well, I'm hurt. I have to report my injury. He says, you think you're hurt now? You're going to cost me that bass boat. So if you think you're hurt now, you go ahead and report it. But then I'm going to take you out back and I'm going to show you what hurt really looks like. The employee reported his injury, and his buddy followed up on the threat and took him out back and beat him up and put him in the hospital. That employee called Federal OSHA from his hospital bed and filed his complaint. And woe be unto that company because it was repeated willful fines, which under Federal OSHA back then were about $70,000 per instance per day. They found over 93 cases that should have been recorded that were not, because that bass boat was sitting in the middle of the shop. You don't want to do that. You want to make safety a good thing. Employees have to understand that with every right is a responsibility. Yes, they have a right to a safe and healthful workplace, but they have to do their part. Safety is like a ham and eggs breakfast, right? The chicken was involved, the pig was committed. You need your employees to be committed. They all have skin in the game. If somebody's going to get hurt, it could just as easily be them or as somebody else. So they have to understand you have a role to play in keeping your friends safe and keeping yourself safe. Everyone has to be committed. For workers, a positive safety culture exhibits behavior such as following procedures, encouraging peers to act safely. Sometimes standing up to your friends can be the hardest part. We learned that in Harry Potter, right? Because, what was his name? He got extra points for Gryffindor because he stood up to Harry Potter. So sometimes you have to stand up to your employees. I'm sorry, my Harry Potter knowledge is like this low. I should probably be up here. You want to perform job reviews, reporting hazards, and providing feedback to supervisors and peers. For supervisors, you have to support your workers by mindfully reinforcing those safe behaviors. If you see somebody doing a good thing, just walk over and give them a pat on the back. People want to be recognized for the things that they do. And it doesn't have to be a huge recognition. Just a pat on the back, a nice certificate saying, hey, you're the best. Supervisors have to follow the same rules too. They have to be the example. Managers, they have to provide support for their supervisors. They have to provide accountability, help them with the mechanisms that are in place. Every meeting you go to, you should start with a safety moment. That's my personal opinion. The whole meeting doesn't have to be about safety, but let's start with it. Let's talk about it. Let's get it out there. And if they hear management saying, look, guys, your safety is important to me. Here's what we need to do for the day, but let's do it safely. Doesn't have to be that hard. And then your top executives, they have to bolster the efforts by making sure the resources are available. And they have to set the example as well. So something to keep in mind, it's a very simple mathematical equation. Now, I don't do math in public, but this is one I can do. Frequency plus risk equals accidents. So the more time you have hazards, or the more times you take something and do it unsafely, the more risk you take, the more likely you are to have an accident. But if you have awareness and action, that equals safety. Very simple mathematical equation. Hazards and unsafe behaviors, if you see it, you own it. That's a very simple process, and it's something you have to train your employees on. Prevention of hazards is a core element. I can't tell you how many times where I've walked out of a facility and thought, the employees are the hazard. Betsy, what are you saying? The employees were making more hazards than they were fixing. They were blocking the fire extinguishers or the exits with the trash can because they didn't have anywhere else to put it, because that's what they thought management wanted, right? Because they'll do what they think you want them to do. They were creating the hazards. They need to be the preventers. There has to be a relentless pursuit of hazard recognition. And it's not enough just to say, if you see a hazard, you need to report it. Employees need to know what a hazard looks like. What do you mean exactly? You need to train them on that. They also need to have a sense of pride, not just in achieving their goals, but in the daily process that makes that achievement possible. So if you fix a hazard one day, and you come back in and that hazard is there the next day, it's going to come back the next day, then you haven't done a full abatement of the hazard. Once it's fixed, it needs to stay fixed. And that's where you have to monitor to make sure that that hazard control stays effective. So you want to make sure that you focus on correcting the system that led to the hazard rather than just fixing the hazard. And you certainly don't want to blame your employees for accidents. You don't want to blame them for hazards. Okay, we have a hazard, let's acknowledge it. Why did it occur? Let's focus on why and not who created that hazard. Again, we want it to be positive. How do you improve your understanding of your safety and health management system, and how do you make sure it's implemented effectively? You want to make sure your employees are enabled. They need to know what their authorities are, they need to know what they need to do, and that takes training and education. Who knows the difference between training and education? Anybody? Training is the how-to, education is the why. Okay, here's how you make this part. This is why you don't stick your hand in a machine. This is what will happen, right? So you have to have training and education. And ongoing self-evaluation, you want to evaluate yourself frequently. In-house audits, it's nice if you can get John to come and do a consultation. You don't have to wait for him. Go ahead and do your own. So, ongoing education and ongoing self-evaluation. Monitor, review, and reflect on your personal achievements and your effectiveness. Get as much data as you can on what you're doing. So John mentioned that you can get statistics back from the Labor Department. So when you send in your survey, you think, okay, there's the end of my data. I don't have to use that anymore, right? Wrong. You can call Shelley, and Shelley can send you a report that says, okay, here's something that we've identified as a trend in your company or in your facility or in your industry. And she can send you a breakdown of that. Usually not while the survey's active. She'll like to do that afterwards. But that data's yours. They want you to use it. So you can get a report back on some trends, time of day, day of the week, types of injuries, injuries by department, injuries by job description. There's all different ways that can be broken down. You can do that yourself too. You can take your logs, and that's what we really want you to use it for. And you can use that data to drive your own in-house improvement. You don't have to wait. And then talk to your employees. Get feedback from them. Find out what's working for them, what's working for you. Do you want your employees to just be involved, or do you want them to be committed? You want them to be committed. We already talked about that. Management can benefit because you have more people helping you improve safety and health if you get your employees involved. Anybody in here serve as the sole safety professional for your organization? How many of you started out to be a safety professional? Fantastic, that's great. Would it be nice to have help? Anybody got all the time and resources to do everything they want to do? Get your employees on board. Make a safety committee. Rotate people through. It doesn't even have to be that formal. One of the things I always did when I do a walkthrough of our facility, I'd grab one of the new employees and say, hey, we're going to go do a safety walkthrough. I need you for 15 minutes. Come go with me. You'll take notes. And anything I found, I'd have them write down, and they would ask me questions as we walk through. Well, what are you looking for? Well, what is that fire extinguisher supposed to have? What's that tag mean? Or when's the next inspection due? Just something that simple. Just have somebody come and walk through with you. That gets your employees involved. You want to have a good feedback loop. And in a feedback loop, there's never a dead end. So you start out, employees let management know. Oh, so let's start here. Identify hazard. So an employee finds a hazard. They come over here and they report the hazard to management, either through a supervisor or directly. Management corrects the hazard, and then they should go back and tell the employees what they did to fix that hazard. And then periodically, management needs to come back and check and say, hey, is that still working? How's that guard on that machine working out for you? 9 times out of 10, that guard's in the corner because the employee didn't like it. It got in the way and it slowed down production, and they wanted to make a bonus. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. But these feedback loops will help your safety and health management system move forward. There should always be some kind of a loop, never a dead end. You want employees to be engaged and informed, both on your formal inspections and your informal inspections, how hazards are being resolved. If they have a safety suggestion, That's a great way to get their input. Management has to demonstrate that a reporting hazard is a benefit. It's not a burden to the agency. I can't fix something if I don't know exists. Something you may have to say to your employees often. And they have to have the courage to speak up. You have to make it a positive thing. If the employees are scared to talk at the end of the meeting because you stood up there and preached at them, you're not going to get a good feedback loop. You've got to make it an open communication. And if they know something's going to be done, that's another way that they're going to be more likely to be engaged. Had one company I went to, and I asked the employees, I said, do you guys report hazards? They said, well, we used to. I said, what do you mean you used to? Well, we did, but then we noticed nothing ever got done. I said, well, do you guys have a suggestion box, or how do you do it? He said, nah, we just gave up. We don't have anything really. They didn't even ask us anymore. And I'm looking right behind the employees, and there's the safety suggestion box on the wall with a padlock on it. So I pull out my business card, and I write on the back of it, call me when you get this. And I dropped it in the box. Haven't heard from them since. So sad. They had a feedback loop, and they quit using it. But the employees have to have that courage to speak up. We talked about education and training. You have to train at every level. Employees, supervisors, managers all have to be trained. But the training has to be pertinent for the work that they do. There is nothing more tedious as a trainer than teaching a class to employees who will not use it, who do not need it. I had a company that asked me to come in and do training for crane operation and how to do a crane inspection for the secretaries in their office. And I'm like, are you sure? She said, yeah, because they could get promoted someday. They might work out in the shop, or they might be out there while we're working on a crane. We really just want them to know not to mess with it. But they might, so it's important that they know how to do that. My evaluations are always good. These came back 5s and 6s. I did a great class. Why am I getting 5s and 6s? Wrong audience. It's the wrong audience. You have to give them training that they need for the work that they do. It has to be pertinent to their needs. Supervisors and managers, they need more than just safety training. Most people who make supervisor are usually promoted because they were good workers. But that doesn't give them the skills to be good supervisors. They have to be trained on those skills, the communication, the leadership, the coaching, the team building. They need that. People learn differently. I am a very auditory learner. I have to hear it, and then I'm also very kinesthetic. I have to do it. So you tell me how to do something, and then let me show you that I learned how to do it, or show me how you do it, and then let me follow. I have to get my hands involved, and I have to hear it. I hate reading directions because I just look at them, I read them, okay, yeah, I get it, but that doesn't mean anything when it comes time to do it, like crocheting. I can't read instructions on how to crochet. I go to YouTube, I watch a video, I can sit down and do it for hours. Piece of cake. But your employees have different learning styles, and if you can incorporate all the learning styles, you'll catch everybody. So if you have a lecture, if you have PowerPoints, if you have videos to show, that catches your visual learners. Your auditory learners hear what you say. Your kinesthetic learners, now we're going to demonstrate. How are we going to do this? Do a demonstration and show them. Give them feedback on how they're doing when you let them try it. You have to use all those methods to reach everybody. We had an employee come in for a training course that his employer said he had to have, send him to us, and we have some very strict rules on what we can train them on and how we do it. We cannot read the test questions to them. And this employee could not read. They were setting them up for failure. I have never felt so bad for anybody in my life. I mean, he was literally in tears because he couldn't read and I couldn't help him. I was literally almost in tears too. Who does your training? I'm a fan of outside trainers. It's what I do. They're great for bringing in new concepts and general ideas that are very broad-reaching. Computer-based and online education, fantastic tool. It's very convenient, good for general concepts that are broad and far-reaching. Again, it's the education component. It teaches them the why. It may talk a little bit about the how, but it doesn't actually show them the how. Then you have your internal trainers, and I think they're absolutely necessary, even if they can't talk. You have to train on the specific policies in your facility. If you don't give that outside trainer your program and give them time to orient to it, learn it, understand it, they're not going to be effective at training them on what your employees need to know about your facility. So you have to use a combination of training methods and maybe even a combination of training providers. But there comes a point where you have to train them yourself internally on the things that are applicable to your agency. So how do you strengthen your culture? We've talked a lot about that, but I'm going to give you a couple of just really quick bullet points. 8 steps to a stronger culture. First of all, define your safety responsibilities. Make sure they're very clear, very specific, include policies, goals, and plans for your safety culture. Have a vision and share that vision with your employees. What's the difference between a goal and a vision? Anybody know? Your goal could be your vision, but your vision may not be your goal. Okay? Goals are steps to take you to the next level. Your vision is that ultimate pinnacle. It's the angels in the sky moment. It's the high-reaching vision. You want to have a vision for safety. Here's another one I really hate is our goal is 0 injuries. No, that's your vision. But if you have a 9.8 or a 900.8 injury rate, it's not a reasonable goal. It's a great vision. But you want to make sure that you're taking that step by step. Have accountability and enforce it. You've got to have disciplinary procedures in place. They have to be fair, they have to be equitable, they have to be communicated, and they also have to be enforced. And you have to hold everyone to the same level. If you have supervisors who get away with not enforcing safety or doing things that are unsafe, you got to fix that. You've got to make it right. You can't have them doing the right, saying one thing and then doing something completely different. Give your employees multiple options for communicating, whether it's reporting injuries, reporting hazards, making safety suggestion. There's lots of different ways you can do it. The safety suggestion box is one way. Having a form that they fill out, whether they put their name on it or not, doesn't really matter. They can do it by email. Whatever's easiest is most likely what people will do. Some people are really more concerned with confidentiality, so you need to have another method that allows them to be confidential. There has to be a chain in command to make sure supervisors are held accountable for being responsive. There's nothing worse than putting that business card in the box and never hearing from the company again. Or putting that safety suggestion in and never hearing from your supervisor. Even if it's, we got your suggestion, we don't think it's the right way to go, here's what we're going to do instead. We think this will work. If it doesn't, follow up with me and let me know. Feedback loop, right? Report, report, report. I told everybody that, look, if you see a hazard, you own it. And you own everything that happens until you report it to somebody who can fix it. And I don't care if it's that there's not enough toilet paper in the bathroom or there's a light bulb out in a closet. I want to know about it. Report, report, report. And my number of reports went up. And I'm okay with that. Most of them were household or maintenance issues that I could just pass off to the building manager. And that was okay too. They got fixed. And I would report back to the person who reported it to me. Things will go up. You may have more injuries at first. When people understand that they have a right to report their injuries, even if it's just a minor cut, you may have some more first aid cases come in that you didn't know about, but that's data. That's information that you can use to make your safety program better and improve your culture. Data is key. You need good data. Good data in, good data out. You may need to rebuild your investigation system. If you get if you get a hazard report or you get a safety report comes in, somebody got hurt, near miss, and all you do is look at it and go, oh, well, he's being an idiot, and file it away, that's not a good investigation. Again, that's data. You need to use it, because if you don't, he will. Promise you. And you need to build trust. This is so important. You have to have trust in your culture. Your supervisors have to trust their managers. Managers have to trust the employees to do the right thing. It goes both ways. You've got to have good trust. And then celebrate your successes. We went a week without an injury. Okay, good job. We went a week where we had 50 hazard reports come in. Fantastic. Good job. Celebrate the little things. Celebrate the things that lead to the big things, because those are the things that keep people motivated. They keep them coming back. So even if it's just a little thing, even if it's just a pat on the back, celebrate even birthdays. Celebrate anniversaries. How long has he been with the company? Oh, he's been here 28 years. He's doing something right. We're doing something right to keep him that long. Let's celebrate that. Celebrate everything. You want to conduct periodic assessments of your safety and health management system. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can do top-down, start with top management, start interviewing there, do self-audits, do internal audits, have somebody come in like the labor department, do program reviews, get your employees involved with that, trend analysis, perception surveys can tell you a lot. Lots of great ones available on the internet that you can borrow from. And those ongoing dialogues with your employees. The other way you can do it is a bottom-up. And that starts with the employees, and this is a great task for a safety committee or even a short-term committee. Let them do their own self-audit. How did they perceive management's doing with their safety program? Have discussions on those trend analysis that come back out. Look at those perception surveys and look at those ongoing dialogues. What are the employees saying between themselves? Get that conversation involved. When you have a top-down and a bottom-up survey, then you can do what's called a gap analysis. Find out where you can bridge the gap. So here's an example of a gap analysis. So this was the top-down survey that I did with a company. Management felt like they were really strong on hazard recognition, and they felt like they did a really good job on employee involvement. They were really strong there, but they felt like they were deficient on the employee hazard recognition. They were developing a little bit on supervisor education and a little bit into management commitment. So they knew they had some weaknesses. They felt like they had some strengths. So here's what the employees at the same company said. Look at the difference. They felt that they were very strong on hazard recognition. The employees felt like they were really good at it. They felt like management was getting better at providing education and that they were becoming more involved. But they felt like they were deficient in supervisor education. They felt like their supervisors didn't know a lot about safety. There wasn't a lot of confidence there. So let's go back and look at the other one. Management, employees. So now we know where to bridge our gaps. We need to work on letting the employees know what supervisor education is happening. Maybe you need to do some more supervisor education. They need to be felt like the employees felt like they did a good job on hazard recognition, but management did not. So where's the gap there? Maybe management walks through and they find more hazards because they know what they're looking for. Maybe the employees are just thinking, we found all these hazards and they got lucky because they just kind of guessed at some. So maybe we need to do some more training on what constitutes a hazard. So the whole goal is how do we bridge those gaps so that we can bring employees and management together and make our culture strong. And that's the whole point of this part of the safety and health management system, is how do we make our culture strong? Safety culture is an organizational culture that places a high value and importance on safety beliefs, values, and attitudes. Attitude is everything for the employees, for the supervisors, for the managers. We can characterize it as the way things are done around here. Culture is the end result of combined individual and group efforts towards values, attitudes, and goals. And improving your culture is about ongoing dialogue, visible improvement, where everybody's perspective is considered.